the headline was, or the question is, we offered somebody a job and then they had got a bad reference. Should this job offer be pulled? So this came from Inc. magazine, and someone had submitted this question saying that they offered somebody a job and it was contingent on a good reference coming back. Now, I thought that was odd. That why didn't you do that before?
So you nailed what I practically wanted to circle in red. The position is permanent and will be subject to a 3-month probationary period and reference check.
So the probationary period, that's anything.
I get that,
Right.
yeah.
The reference check was odd, but they said the reason he didn't want or she, we don't know, didn't want the reference check done was because they were still employed and they didn't want their employer to know they were looking.
That was going to be the reference.
And that's where they wanted the reference check to come in. And then so the person resigns, he goes to the new position, they call the employer,
They get a
reference check is
Yeah.
and now they don't know if they can fire the guy or not. What do you think?
First, you laid this out perfectly, and for anybody listening who's been in an HR capacity or you've dealt with this, I have not heard of this being done. No. I've heard of probationary period, particularly when you hire a firm to do an executive search or something. It's a payment thing, there's probation. But to have someone resign, that job they resigned from gives them a not so great reference.
There's a reason you're leaving.
Yeah, I would think so. So the answer they gave was interesting. And they first kick it off with what Tim observed. Offers contingent on a reference check can be sticky. You're asking someone to resign from their job while keeping open the possibility that you might yank the offer they're accepting. My advice is stay away from this practice as much as possible. Do your due diligence, get the reference check done, make the offer, leave it at that.
Stay away from this company then.
Yeah.
Because the other thing, and I haven't been in corporate America in 15 years, but even back then, because of how litigious we are,
Yep. You could sue.
you could say nothing. So if somebody called for a reference to say, hey, we're calling for a reference on so-and-so, the person worked for you, all I was allowed to say, or all we did as a corporate policy, was I can give you the dates that he or she were employed.
If you weren't going to give a good reference.
No, regardless.
So
We didn't
neither
give any references.
neither positive nor negative.
Because it puts you on the hook.
Wow.
So it
Wow.
got to the point where it's like I can confirm, and we couldn't confirm salary.
So this came from your legal department.
This was from, in the HR department says if someone calls for a reference on, Mary Jo. Wow. Mary Jo worked here from, June 1998 until April 2015,
Flip it around, and a good friend of yours who lives in Chicago, let's say, or Oregon or Milwaukee, someone's changing jobs and wants to give you as a personal reference. They can't do you as a professional one because they didn't have a business dealing with you, but you could easily do a personal reference.
Yeah.
But if it's anybody who is connected to the company, you were told from legal.
Yep. And you're exactly right. That's what you would do. And in those cases, when I had interviewed as well, and they said, I would say I don't want to give you my direct boss or my direct supervisors. I don't want them to know I'm looking. But internally, there's a few people that I've worked with at senior levels that know I'm looking, and I'd be happy for them to talk to you. And that usually ends up being fine. But I do think it's a crazy thing that a company would do this, because it's just fraught with issues.
It feels like it's going to, and in fact, they continue to say that the company that offered the job contingent on references has a high responsibility to not immediately rescind the offer, but to try to get more information. And in fact, that was the recommendation, is dig down in it and then approach the candidate and say, we called your reference at your old company. Here's what they said. And then he or she can say, you know what? That relates to a project I was on that was out of my purview, or it was out of my scope of work. I just think you're putting everybody in a really icky position.
Yeah. And if you're savvy, particularly in industries, now I was in the auto industry, so as big as the auto industry is, it was small.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly in
People
marketing
move
departments.
around. Yeah.
So if there was somebody, and I'm like, so I would dial up somebody I knew along the way that probably ran across this person. Hey, do you know Joe Smith? What do you think?
Yeah.
And you end up. I mean, one of the funniest ones for me was, I remember the Subaru was hell bent on getting diversity, bringing diversity in because Jesse Jackson was coming. Rainbow Push.
I remember the Rainbow.
So they'd gone out and hired this kid, for almost double than every other person in the position that he was going
I know who
into.
you're talking about too. Yeah.
And I was traveling, and I'd come back, and HR was delighted. We've got ourselves a diversity
Got a game
candidate. It's going
changer.
on and on and on and on and on. Came from this luxury brand and blah 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 blah. And, it's Latino. Dot 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 dot. So the guy starts, and I remember, and I just started asking him questions, and he was Arab, so it didn't count.
They
Arab doesn't count as a diverse hire.
thought because
They
of
thought
his
he was Latino.
appearance, he was Latino.
Right. And I'm like, hola. He's like, I'm from Lebanon.
I know exactly what you're talking about. He ended up being a good guy.
Great guy.
But
HR trying to check the box, check the box, check the box. And I said, now you've put this kid in a box. I said, you've had expectation that he was something he's not. You've way overpaid him for what he's doing. The other people in the department are now angry about the whole. Anyway.
on the reference front, I will conclude by saying this. I hate references to begin with. For me to rack my brain to bother, that's the better way of putting it, to bother three other professionals to give, but you and I may be at a certain point in our career where I now know enough people that you could do that. And in fact, I was meeting with friends of ours recently, and I said to the husband and wife, who I both know professionally, I said, guys, if you ever need a reference, because he asked me for a reference one day and I didn't get back to him in time. And I said, carte blanche, just let me know you're sending someone my way and I'll give the reference. Don't even bother asking. And if you ask for a reference, Tim and John's rule, make sure that the person that you are going to be giving the name of knows that you're giving their name. My old assistant, Josh, Greg's nephew, I got a call out of the blue one day, and it's someone who's calling for a reference for Josh for this job. And she's like, I like him, and I have some misgivings. And I'm like, okay, well, here's our experience. I said, he's super good at solving problems. He's this, he's this. I said, you want my advice if you hire him? And I said, you should hire him. Keep him busy. And you know what? She followed the advice. She kept him busy. He was very happy for years. All right. And then I saw
Yeah,
me.
we hired him. He was my friend's nephew.
Yeah, exactly.